So you are currently a municipal trial court judge,
Yes, Your Honor.
and I think it is fair to assume there's still a long ladder for you to climb in the judicial hierarchy.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm just curious, what motivated you to apply for the very lofty position of ombudsman?
Well, Your Honor, first is public service, Your Honor. Remember, if appointed as ombudsman, there's a great challenge in serving the public. The whole wide challenge to serve the Filipino people. So, although as a judge, municipal trial court is also you can also serve as to the people, but having a higher position to serve the Filipino people, I think that's my calling also. And of course, as we know for the fact today, the public has lost confidence in the government regarding the corruptions that abound today. So probably I could make a great impact and lasting change in the ombudsman that would also serve the Filipino people as well.
Because of your application, I think it is also safe to presume that your passion for fighting graft and corruption is very strong.
Yes, Your Honor.
At what point in your life, or what activities have you undertaken in the past along this direction?
Regarding the fighting corruptions, of course, Your Honor, first before I joined the judiciary, I was also first a prosecutor. Then, in the prosecution office, I serve with neutrality, impartiality to those litigants who come to seek redress in the office of the prosecution. Much as well also to when I joined the judiciary, I also serve with integrity and probity to those stakeholders who come to seek justice. So by that alone, maybe I could assure that I am driven to fight corruption, Your Honor.
Can you please tell us in brief the mandate of the Office of the Ombudsman?
Well, the mandate of the Ombudsman as provided in Section 12 of the Constitution and as re-echoed in RA 6670 is that the Ombudsman and his deputies, being the protectors of the state, shall act promptly on any complaint on any complaint filed before it in whatever manner against the public officials or any erring officials against the government, and see to it that proper resolution is served, criminal, civil, or administrative liability.
Can you give us an idea on what will you do and seek to achieve in the first 100 days of your office as Ombudsman?
Well, Your Honor, as I send the proposals, the short-term and long-term, well, of course, there is a connotation, or there is a pending cases in the Ombudsman that may construed as inordinate delay. So, if ever I be appointed, luckily, then first thing that I would do is to see to it to ensure that those pending cases will be resolved promptly and expeditiously, giving time frame within which to resolve. Because as far as the Ombudsman is concerned, the rules of procedure, there are timeline which I think is long enough. Remember the fact finding, it will be 6 to 12 months. The preliminary investigation would be 12 to 24 months. And the resolution. So why not keep it a little less so that all cases pending therein will be resolved promptly. That is as far as the case is concerned. But of course, in the long term, if I will be luckily appointed, I have plans for the Ombudsman that will definitely not only reduce or mitigate the corruption, but prevent it as well. That is my proposal. The prevention, because as of now, Your Honor, we see the actions of the government is reactive. Once there's a corruption that happens, here comes now the different agencies calling for investigation. In fact, independent bodies will be created by the President. The Ombudsman is also there, the DOJ. But we are only on the reactive side. Why not we go on the proactive side? Prevent the corruption at its very core, the grassroots, so that they would know corruption that's all to speak of. I will introduce therein the creation of a committee, organic committee, maybe directly from the Ombudsman or any separate entity that would see to it those government institutions who has a bidding process involved in the transaction would see to it that they are performing above board the process that they are performing. Look, in the DPWH, as media outlet has been reporting that DPWH is allegedly plagued with corruption. Why not create a committee there, organic committee, that will see to it that the bidding process is not rigged? As I've seen in the Senate hearing, probably it's Senator Estrada who asked some of the resource person there, the contractor, and asked, why is it that you have only a 250,000 capitals, but you bag a 5 billion project? So that alone, Your Honor, if there is a committee there in the Bids and Awards Committee in the DPWH, I think corruption will never set in, because as mandated by the Constitution and the Ombudsman law, the Ombudsman has a oversight function regarding the corruption, inefficiency, fraud of any instrumentalities of the government. So we should create there a committee to see to it that those bidding process is above board. In the bidding process, there is a financial and technical legal qualifications. So by that alone, if this company is not legally, financially, and technically capable, why award those contracts to them? Not only that, Your Honor, from bidding until the implementation of the so-called projects or any goods or services provided by the government, Ombudsman must have a say on it. They must probably get clearance that all those projects have been implemented above board according to plans and specifications. So probably that's my short-term and long-term plans for the Ombudsman if I am luckily appointed, Your Honor.
Thank you. That's my final question, and good luck,
Thank you,
Judge
Your Honor.
Rudenas.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney Mejia. Our next interviewer is the Honorable Justice Erlinda Pinera Uy.
Thank you, Attorney Cuevas. Good afternoon, Judge Rodenas.
Good afternoon, Honorable Erlinda.
Yes, follow-up question. Actually, some of my question pertain to your short-term, long-term plan.
Yes, Your Honor.
I did notice that you, in your long-term plan, you suggested to create organic committees.
Yes, Your Honor.
In every department and agency of the government.
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you expound on the mechanics?
Actually, no, not in every. Maybe we could have a pilot organic committee. Maybe it's under the Ombudsman or any independent body that
Pricing of. Who
if-
will be the members of
if
the
it would
committee?
be, if it would be, Your Honor, the Ombudsman, well, the Ombudsman itself, because it has an oversight function given by the Constitution and the RA 6770 creating the Ombudsman. So if the Ombudsman itself may create a committee, then probably there is a good chance that to eradicate the corruption at all. As we all know, as we are all aware, the Commission is audit is also right there. But the Commission of Audit is only a post-audit. So why not we create an organic committee under the Ombudsman that will prevent the corruption at its grassroots level?
So the members will be coming from the agency itself?
Yes,
or from
Your
the
Honor.
Ombudsman?
To my mind, it will be coming from the Ombudsman. But if it is feasible, then probably the ombudsman, as its recommendatory power to the executive and the Congress, may recommend for other specific organization committee. Right now, that's being made by the president himself. Creation of the independent body to address the corruption regarding the flood control.
How would you handle a situation where a complaint filed before the office of the ombudsman, if appointed, involves a close friend, a former colleague, or people of strong political influence?
Well, Your Honor, I will stick to the mandate given by the Constitution and the RA 6770 to the Ombudsman, and that is the Ombudsman and his deputies, being the protectors of the state, shall act promptly to all complaints in whatever form submitted to it to ensure that those corrupt public officials may be held criminally or civilly liable. Remember the scale of justice. The lady holding the scale of justice is blindfolded. So, of course, I would see to it that I will always keep a blind eye to those. I will not keep a blind eye to those people who seek redress to the ombudsman. Fair. That would be fair.
Now, as a sitting judge, have you encountered such an experience? Cases filed by close friends or involving close friends, former colleagues, or people of strong political influence?
As of the moment, none, Your Honor. But if ever there would be, then I will still perform the functions that is mandated to me by the Constitution, being a judge, and if being an ombudsman, if luckily appointed. Because if a person of high position cannot perform its function, then he's not fitted to that position.
How do you define moral courage in public office? And if appointed, how would you demonstrate your moral courage and independence from political influence?
Well, moral courage is performing your functions without fear or favor. Now, if ever I'm confronted with those scenarios that may have an influence in me, then I will still stick to the duties that is mandated upon me. Because presently, as a judge, if I sit in the courtroom, I am not performing on my personal capacity. I am performing as a judge for public service. It's not me, but it's the position that I carry.
My last question, beyond prosecuting corrupt officials, if appointed, do you think the ombudsman should take a role in educating and empowering citizens to fight corruption?
Yes,
Please
Your Honor.
explain your answer.
Yes, Your Honor, that would be part of the proactive approach. That should have been done by the... I am not saying that it's not being done by the present ombudsman, but of course, if I be appointed, I will take a proactive approach because I want to prevent the corruption at the inception. Because if there would be if the corruption would be eradicated before it comes, then there's no corruption to speak of. No grease money, so to speak, no lagay, no kickback, so to speak, because that's mainly the function of the ombudsman. But today, as I see it, the ombudsman, as well as other government agencies, is merely on a reactive mode, not on a proactive mode. So if ever I be appointed, I will be driven to the proactive approach in order to eradicate the corruption as a whole.
So that was my last question. Good luck to you, Judge Rodenas.
Thank you, Honorable Erlinda.
Thank you, Justice Uy. Our next interviewer is the Honorable Congresswoman Jervil Reyes Luistro.
Good afternoon, Judge Rodenas.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Your career reflects a mix of judicial, prosecutorial, and private sector experience.
Yes, Your Honor.
3 years as an MTC judge, served as a prosecutor, legal officer of private and public offices,
Yes,
as
Your Honor.
well as staff roles
Yes,
in
Your Honor.
trial courts and even in DOJ. question, Judge, is how has this diverse background prepared you for the Ombudsman responsibilities?
Well, Your Honor, with that diverse background, I can see that I'm very much prepared in handling the office of the Ombudsman. Why? Because I have been to private practice. I have been a litigation lawyer. I've also taught in the law school. I've become a prosecutor, and also as a judge. So, in that all sense, maybe I could address well the grievances of all people.
What experience of the various agencies you came from do you think you will utilize in curbing anti-graft and corrupt practices in the Philippines, in the office of the Ombudsman?
Yes, Your Honor. I think so, and very well so. Because in the private practice, you also litigate there, see to it that justice has been done. In the prosecution, also, it's just a similar scenario in the Office of Ombudsman, where the Ombudsman also prosecute. Then, I think by that alone, Your Honor, I could very well use my experiences, being an Ombudsman. And also, as a presiding judge, Your Honor, to see to it that not only the prosecuting the corrupt officials, so to speak, but also giving him the due process also. Because as we all know, even though the government official is accused of something, he is still innocent until proven guilty. He has also a right, much also the right of the Filipino people. As we all know, the rights of one ends when the right of other begins. So there should be a fair balance, Your Honor.
I understand the fair balance that you're pronouncing, but we have to consider, of course, that unlike in your previous post and even in your current post, in the Ombudsman, you will be dealing with respondents who are government officials with the impression of having a network of influence.
Yes, Your Honor.
So how do you think will this be different from the previous post and the current post that you're handling right now?
Maybe it would differ a bit, but of course, of my position, previously a prosecutor and now as a judge, and of course with my plans for innovations in the Ombudsman, that is the proactive approach. I think the corruptions that is mandated by the Office of Ombudsman, which is the so-called watchdog, will be eradicated altogether. Not only reactive approach, but altogether eradicated.
For my second question, Judge, per records, a prior complaint was filed against you.
Yes, Your Honor.
That's by Judge Maria Teresa Lociano.
Yes, Your Honor.
This regards your act of improperly acquiring a copy of decision in a case involving a former client,
Yes, Your Honor.
which later you admitted and apologized for. Do you confirm that?
Yes, Your Honor.
How do you reflect on this incident today? And what lessons have you drawn from it about propriety and professional responsibility that will guide you if appointed as the next ombudsman?
Well, that complaint, Your Honor, a written complaint, that actually is mere lapse of judgment on my part. Because as I answered that, Your Honor, the decision was already released officially. Okay? Probably that's on June 10, and I secure a copy on probably July 25. I just secure it because, Your Honor, I just want to know the results of the decision because I happen to be on top of it. Both parties, I am in as counsel, and of course the other parties are also a friend of mine. So it's just a curiosity that led me to it. But of course, what I'm saying is that the decision has already been officially issued. Officially. And I just get a copy to know the result thereof. Probably it's just a lapse of judgment that may not entail that should not measure up my being as my being in this position, Your Honor, because it's just a curiosity that led me to get a result. Because as a lawyer, Your Honor, you always want to see what happened to the previous case that you handled, specifically if it's already reached the decision stage, so if ever similar situation would arise, you will know what happened, what went wrong, whether you win or whether you lose, and you could learn from it, acquire knowledge from it, and be a better version of yourself. That's only that led me to it, Your Honor. But I admit I sincerely apologize with that one. In fact, Judge Ligaliano there did not also vouch for my being, Your Honor, but for myself. He's not against me, but just that on that aspect that I get a decision, Your Honor. I get that copy of the decision.
What I heard from you, Judge, is the justification
Yes, Your Honor.
for acquiring the copy of the decision complained of by Judge Maria Teresa Laciano. The question now is, what lesson did you get from that?
Well, Your Honor, I must grow from the lapse of judgment that I may have been committed without bad faith on my part, and on a similar scenario that may happen, probably I will not do the same again, Your Honor.
Thank you. For my third question, Judge, Republic Act number 3019, which is the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, has been in effect since 1960. In your view, does the law remain responsive to the current forms of corruption in the government?
To my mind, Your Honor, it's still a good law. The only thing that should be done is to implement it at its core. So implementation is the only way to animate that Republic Act 3019, Your Honor.
May we know which part of the implementation are you trying to refer to? You are saying that the law is still a good law, and what we need to do is to implement the same. May we know which aspect of the implementation would you like to fortify?
Because, Your Honor, I think it's section 20 of the 6-7... I don't know. I think there's a section there, Your Honor, that speaks for the ill-gotten wealth, Your Honor. So probably we could use that not on a reactive approach, but on a proactive approach. The Ombudsman must already conduct in itself a lifestyle check from other sources. Example, the SALN. It can be juxtaposed to the present material things that a supposed government employee has. If it's disproportionate, then there is a prima facie evidence that there is a corruption that happens. Then, in that case, the Ombudsman can implement those, Your Honor.
Okay, and I understand, and of course you will acknowledge also a lot of laws on corruption were passed, no?
Yes, Your Honor.
We have this, the 3019, the
1379.
procurement law, which is 9184.
Yes, Your Honor.
Meron din tayong code of conduct and ethical standards for public officials and employees. We can also consider the AMLA law,
Yes, Your Honor.
no?
Yeah.
Kung tutusin, we have a number of
Yes,
laws
Your Honor.
already which address corruption in the country.
Yes, Your Honor.
If you will be given the chance to be appointed as the next ombudsman, would you advocate for their codification under one anti-graft and corrupt practices code?
Yes, Your Honor, that would be an impactful procedure, Your Honor, because as of now, even lawyers, much less the spectators and stakeholders, they are not so abreast with that several divergent laws of us. So, if ever I would espouse for that codification in order that it may be read by the Filipino people, they will know how to respond to it. They will know what rights they have in order for their grievances, and also as well as to guide the lawyers, the ombudsman as well, and the public as a whole regarding that laws that were the several laws that were enacted.
You mean they will be more guided,
Yes, Your Honor.
having all of them under one code
Yes, Your Honor.
instead of separate laws?
Yes, Your Honor. Because of the different laws, Your Honor, probably even a lawyer of caliber is confused also.
Okay, so kanina I've been hearing about the proactive
Yes, Your Honor.
vis-a-vis the reactive, no?
Yes, Your Honor.
With your inclination towards a proactive ombudsman, question is, although you have discussed this initially, would you institutionalize the power of the ombudsman for a lifestyle check?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, although it is in the power of the ombudsman actually, but the problem, I think the concern is there's no yet rules or procedures regarding the lifestyle check. So if ever I would be appointed, that would also be one of my improvements that will undertake regarding the rules or procedures on how to go about with the lifestyle check vis-a-vis the SALN, because SALN is a document. Then by that, if the public official assets is disproportionate for his or her income, then there's a prima facie evidence that there's a corruption. Then, if there's a corruption, we will go now to the mandate of the ombudsman to initiate proceedings motu proprio, to see to it that indeed this ombudsman has a wrongdoings, malfeasance, misfeasance, or nonfeasance.
Okay, would you advocate for the power of the ombudsman to subpoena bank records?
Yes, Your Honor. I think it is also, to my mind, it's also given as a waiver in the SALN that the ombudsman, the declarant there is waiving all the rights regarding the power of the ombudsman to collate records regarding his financial status, Your Honor.
So is it your submission that when one submits a SALN, he is actually waiving his rights also against, with respect to the bank secrecy law?
To my mind, yes, sir, because the declarant already signed it that is waiving it. But of course, Your Honor, regarding that bank secrecy law and other data that is incorporated in therein, maybe although this the position, my position there is that it must be a public document, but also it has a public in nature also, some of the informations therein. So regarding that one, Your Honor, the publicity of that one, if I may, maybe there should be also a balance between the publicity and the right of the public to know, because as I said, the right of one ends when the right of other begins.
There is a Supreme Court decision which says that despite the grant of power to ombudsman to subpoena bank records under RA 6770, the same must be subject still to a court order.
Yes, Your Honor.
So to go back to my
That
question,
should be my answer.
would you want the ombudsman to have its own power to subpoena bank records in a way that it will not be dependent anymore with the court?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. In order to perform its mandate, because if the mandate of the ombudsman is delimiting, then how could it perform its core functions in carving out the corruption? So definitely, it should be given a wide power in order to curb and eradicate the corruption at its grassroots level, Your Honor.
Another challenge to the investigative power of the ombudsman, and even I believe in their prosecutorial power, is the power to freeze the assets, which under the current law is initiated by AMLA with the Court of Appeals. Question is, would you advocate that the ombudsman be given its own power as well to issue a freeze order?
I think so, Your Honor. To my mind, it should be given through maybe a legislative enactment in order that it can perform well its functions. If it is decapitated by some other issuances or rules, then how could it perform its full mandate, Your Honor? So it would be just a toothless tiger, if so to speak. You have been given this, but you cannot do that.
Well, with your answer, you're espousing for the grant of power to subpoena bank records as well as for the power to issue freeze order. The last question on that line of thought is, how do you balance that with the due process, right to due process of public officials facing cases in the ombudsman?
Well, Your Honor, as enshrined in the Constitution, specifically the Bill of Rights, Section 1, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law, nor be denied of equal protections of law. That's the fundamental law of the every citizen that should be balanced also with the acts or intrusion of the government. So I think there should be still a balance because, as we know, even though the accused, alleged officials is seemingly by evidence is guilty, but still there should be a due process and equal protection law should be applied to him or her.
There are three significant stages in the proceeding of the ombudsman. One is the case build-up, although the same is, I think, disregarded with the 2025 rules. Second is the preliminary investigation. And third is the trial. Which stage among these three stages of the proceedings do you think the ombudsman can exercise its power to subpoena bank records or can exercise its power to issue a freeze order?
To my mind, Your Honor, that is on the preliminary stage because that is the time when the ombudsman will evaluate the evidence and to prove by quantum of evidence that's reasonable proof beyond reasonable doubt if that alleged corrupt officials has violated any law because the fact-finding committee case build-up is conducted by the unit of the ombudsman. So it's only a documentary process to guide the preliminary investigation process to be conducted by the ombudsman to see to it that indeed the corrupt officials have done wrongdoing. So I think in that specific preliminary investigation, that's the time that they would be given. Because if they would not be given, then because after the preliminary investigation, they would finally make an information and charge the accused for the appropriate offenses. So, if the ombudsman will not be given on that in that preliminary investigation stage, how can it polish airtight the accusation against a specific government officials? So I think in the preliminary investigation stage, Your Honor.
For my last question, Judge. Under the existing rule of the ombudsman, they have the power to issue contempt order. Suppose you have a respondent who is already meted with preventive suspension, but the court issued a temporary restraining order on the preventive suspension order. Question: will you exercise your contempt order power to be able to implement the preventive suspension order?
Come again, Your Honor. I was a little bit lost.
Under the existing rule of the ombudsman, they have a power to issue contempt order.
Yes, Your Honor.
You have a respondent who has been meted with a disciplinary action of preventive suspension order. However, she went to court and the court issued a temporary restraining order to stay the implementation of the preventive suspension. Would you exercise your contempt power to implement the preventive suspension order?
Well, Your Honor, even though the Ombudsman has its power of contempt, but of course, the Ombudsman must also see to it that rules and procedures are being kept. In other words, we are government of laws, not of man. So whatever be the stoppage made by the other courts, if it's whether it's be right or wrong, then the Ombudsman also must respect that one, Your Honor, because otherwise we could have an anarchy where we would not respect the laws of a legally competent authority given.
Thank you, Judge, and good luck on your application.
Thank you, Honorable Listro.
Thank you, Congresswoman Luistro. Our next interviewer is the Honorable Attorney Nesauro H. Firme.
Thank you, Attorney Marifel. Good afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Okay, so I'm supposed to ask you three sets of questions. One from the senator, one is a what do you call that, phone-in question. But the third one will be my own set of questions. The senator's question was about lifestyle check, but you have addressed that already.
Okay, Your Honor.
I'll now ask first the question that was sent to the office of the executive officer of the JBC. I'll just try to remove names, for their protection. So this is the question. Judge Rodenas, before being appointed as a judge, he was an in-house counsel of a congressman, and its business including this SunWest Corp construction. The question is, will there be a conflict of interest if in case you are appointed as the ombudsman given the current issues that confront this congressman?
To my mind, Your Honor, there would be no conflict of interest. Why? If luckily I be appointed there, I said a while ago that I am performing there not on my personal capacity, but on the office of the Ombudsman. Well, I will go to the mandate of the Ombudsman as enshrined in Section 12 of the Constitution and re-echoed in RA 6770 that the Ombudsman and his deputies as the protectors of the state must act on any complaint filed therewith on any instrumentalities, government, or against any official, and to see to it that proper criminal proceedings, administrative, and civil liability must be filed. So I don't think, to my mind, Your Honor, even though even though that I am a previous employee of that one, I don't think that there would be a conflict of interest, and I would still perform the mandate of the office, just like the blindfolded woman who holds the scale of justice. It must never turn a blind eye to anybody.
Thank you, Judge. I'll ask my own set of questions. So, number one, if appointed as the ombudsman, what can the stakeholders expect from you?
Well, as I espoused a while ago, Your Honor, I would proactively see to it that corruption is curbed at the grassroots level. Because if we do that, then there would be no corruption at all. If I may, it just come to my mind. Remember when Senator Alan Cayetano was interviewed during his debate probably in the vice presidential race. He was asked what appropriate penalty should be given to the corrupt officials, and he said that it's not the actual penalty, but it's the certainty of convictions. That's the criminal science. He said that it's the certainty of conviction. He said he further claims that to quote, sabi niya, nagnakaw ng tinapay, ay nagnakaw ng tinapay or antibiotic, kulong. Pero kung nagnakaw ng pera ng malaki, magiging congressman. Pag nagnakaw ng mas malaki, magiging senator. That was he said during the debate. And he further said that even in the LTO getting the license, there is already a corruption. Even in buying a house in the BR, there is already a corruption. So, if we could only stop that corruption at the very heart, I think there would be no corruption to speak of. As I would note, the collection of the BIR 2024 is almost 2.85 trillion, Your Honor. The board of the Bureau of Customs is almost a trillion, Your Honor, 900 plus billion. The total revenue of the Gaming Corporation is 400 billion. The PCSO, I think that would be 62 billion. The PAGCOR, 112 billion. So why I'm trying to say this? Because the question is, are we really sure that that amount are those amount that should be given to the government? Probably there's more to it, and we do not know. That's why if we curb corruption at the very core, maybe our government remittances, our collection would be augmented, and probably the government expenditures would be high to address the social services of our nation, the health, the education of the Filipino people. So we just prevent it from happening. That's why I'm espousing a plans for creation of the committee there, just like the independent body of the COA. We will also create their committee in order to address that one. If we prevent the corruption at its very core, if we also enhance the government collections, Your Honor, probably, let's say we have increased the corruption for a 500 billion or a trillion, then that is so astronomical amount that would pave the way for the social services of our nation, Your Honor.
Thank you. So, my next question would be, you have been a candidate for an elective office
Yes, Your Honor.
under BHW party list last 2019 midterm
Yes, Your Honor.
election. Okay. So, question now is, how apolitical are you? Which, no, we mean that an apolitical individual, no, is best or is an ideal characteristic or quality of an ombudsman.
I could certainly say, Your Honor, as far as I'm concerned, that I am very much apolitical. Why? Because I've already done it when I am in the prosecution. Some individuals will come to me to give favor, but I declined it, Your Honor. Of course, luckily in this judicial post, there is no. And perhaps if there would be somebody who would ask favor, I would readily decline it, Your Honor. Because as I say, if I am to assume a post, the ombudsman, as it is, I am assuming it not on my personal capacity, but on the office of the ombudsman, which has mandate enshrined in the Constitution and re-echoed in the RA 6770, creating the ombudsman.
Thank you. So one of the qualities of a good ombudsman would be independence.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Can you tell us an instance where you displayed your independence, whether in the discharge of your duty as a judge or when you were a prosecutor or you've been in the PPA?
A scenario when I have discharged my independence.
Yeah, you have displayed your independence.
Probably I could say when some lawyers appearing in my court where he or she is my close friend and even a godmother or godfather of my child, but still I did not recuse from hearing that one because I do believe that once I assume the office there, I am not the Jason Rodenas that I am performing myself, but I am a judge there performing my duty. Much like if I would be appointed as the ombudsman, I will be performing not Jason G. Rodenas, but as an ombudsman who is the watchdog and the protectors of the state.
Another quality, judge of a good ombudsman, would be the possession of integrity.
Yes,
So
Your
the
Honor.
question is, was there an instance where your integrity was put to test or was tested, and how did you navigate through that?
As far as I concerned, I think it's not yet put to test. But if ever it would be put to test, being a judge and being in the ombudsman, if I would be luckily appointed with the help of God, then I would still stick to the mandate of the ombudsman given to me. Because as I said, if I cannot perform my mandate, then I am not fitted to that position. So I must do what the Constitution, what the law says so. Not on my prerogatives, but the mandate of the office that is in it.
I understand that you have you're living a private life, correct? You have children of young age,
Yes, Your Honor.
relatively young age. No, so my question now is, do you foresee any significant changes in your lifestyle should you be appointed as the next ombudsman? And how would you cope with that?
Probably I would see in the near future, if I'm appointed, is the security of my family. Because if I would be luckily appointed as the ombudsman, there are high-profile names that maybe I would be encountered, because as a graft buster, as a watchdog, necessarily I would be against those high-ranking officials. Then it is probably a risk factor that I must endure.
Not to mention the fact your children live with you there in Legazpi.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, how about you will be separated with them?
Well, Your Honor, if one is seeking for the position of higher position, one must be ready for the sacrifices that entails in it.
So, next question, Judge. How much value do you give to public perception?
The public perception must be beyond reproach. The ombudsman must do things that may not seemingly or see that he is favoring other individuals. Because as we said, even as a judge and as an ombudsman, if luckily appointed, he must be impartial and must appear to be impartial. Even though appearance to be impartial, it must be held high, Your Honor.
So, next question, and you understand that when you become a prominent individual, being the ombudsman, you would receive a lot of criticisms.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, how would you handle those criticisms, Judge?
Criticism or risk are the necessarily connected in the office of the ombudsman. So I would take it as it is, confront as it is whenever the needs arises or if warranted. But I would not be, as an ombudsman, be emotionally carried upon by those criticism, because if I would be carried on by that criticism, then perhaps my judgment would be impaired, Your Honor.
So let us assume, Judge, that you are now appointed as the next ombudsman.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yes. Let us just assume for a few minutes, no? And it's already 2029. So you understand the scenario. Tumawid ka na to the next administration.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sige na, I have 5 things here in my mind that I want you to rank. One being the most significant for you. Number 5 would be the least significant. Okay? So number 1 would be the president that appointed you to this post. Number 2 would be the incumbent president. So it's 2029. In other words, a new president. No? Number 3 would be the public, including their perception. No? So in other words, the stakeholders. Number 4 would be the safety of your family. And number 5 would be your personal goal, your mission and vision to the office.
So, ranking 1 being the highest.
The most significant
most-
as far as you are concerned.
Although I have been called upon to rank those scenarios, but I will rank them. But I will first make a preliminary. Although I am called to rank the scenarios, but on my part, as I said, if I am luckily appointed, I should assume the office of the ombudsman not on my personal capacity, but on the office and mandates that is been given by the Constitution and the law. But given the situation, to just answer your question, maybe I would rank first my family. What's that again?
This president, the present president, the president by 2029, the family, public, and then your personal mission, your goal.
First, the personal mission, because I am the ombudsman, if ever. So that would be my first mandate. Number 2, the family. Number 3, the public. Number 4 is the current president, and number 5 is the previous president. Why those? Probably it will be asked why I rank the president, the current president, the current president, and the past president 4 and 5. Because when an ombudsman is appointed by the president, he should not have a debt of gratitude to the appointing authority. He or she must be independent and must perform his duties or her duties without fear or favor. There's nothing owed. There should be nothing owed to the president, the appointing authority, because that is his function to appoint. You are not there because you have been picked, but you are there because of your qualification, that indeed you can handle well, you can properly dispense well the office of the ombudsman. So by that alone, ombudsman must not think of any favor in anybody.
Thank you. Second to the last question, Judge. No, so if the evidence would warrant, and I know that there would be several persons, most of them public officials, who would help you get this post. No? So assuming the evidence warrants, and these public officials committed some, infractions, involving violation of 3019. So would you have the guts, the courage, the nerve to file criminal administrative cases against these public officials who were instrumental in getting this post?
Yes, Your Honor, because they are just mere instrument of God for having appointed as ombudsman, and I do not know anything from them, and I owe it to the people and to the Almighty God, Your Honor.
Last question, Judge. No, so we know that the term of the ombudsman will last for 7 years.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, if ever appointed, what significant development in your life would make you decide to quit the ombudsman post? In other words, you would not let that 7-year period end?
I think it should not happen because if ever I'm luckily appointed, I will definitely perform the ombudsman up to its last drop, Your Honor, at to the last extent of my term. Because, as I said, I want to serve the public, the Filipino people, and want to curb the corruption at its very core. Because if we can curb the corruption, prevent it altogether, eradicate it together, probably we would have a progressive nation to live on.
Thank you, Judge. That was my last question, and good luck.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney Firme. Our last interviewer is the Honorable Justice Jose Catral Mendoza.
Thank you very much, Attorney Marife.
Good
Good afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Justice.
I represent the retired justices of the Philippines.
Yes, Your Honor.
They have sent questions and they have coursed it through me, and I will ask some of them. First question is, what is the distinction between the right to remain silent and the right against self-incrimination?
Well, Your Honor, the right to remain first, both are enshrined in the Constitution, the right to remain silent and the right against self-incrimination. The right to remain silent is a constitutional right that must be invoked by the person accused, while the right to self-incrimination may be waived if the accused has never invoked the same, Your Honor.
It is the main distinction. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Does the office of the Ombudsman have legal standing to intervene on appeal in administrative cases resolved by it?
A legal standing? Come again, Your Honor.
Does the office of the Ombudsman have the legal standing to intervene on appeal in administrative cases resolved by it?
To my mind, Your Honor, it still has the legal personality in intervening on the administrative cases on appeal, Your Honor.
Okay. Can the doctrine of condonation be applied motu proprio by the office of the Ombudsman? I'm referring to acts committed before the Binay case or Binay decision.
If before that abandonment of the Aguinaldo case, to my mind, the Ombudsman has no power to apply the condemnation, Your Honor.
Cannot motu proprio apply the doctrine of condonation?
To my mind, Your Honor.
Okay. Is the final and unappealable decision of the office of the Ombudsman still be subject of judicial review?
first we must have a distinction on the final executor, because under the ombudsman law, the final executory decision of the ombudsman is referring to those reprimand, to the slight penalty, suspension of 1 year. In that case, that is already final, unappealable, and executory. However, it may still be challenged before the Supreme Court, Your Honor.
Okay, under EO number 226, institutionalized command responsibility. What elements do you have to prove to make a superior liable for the act of subordinates?
To my mind, Your Honor, first that he knows of the action of his subordinates. Number two, he did not do anything to prevent that the wrongdoings that may have been committed by the subordinate. Number three, if it's acted in conspiracy with those with the subordinates, and of course, if he is in bad faith, Your Honor. That's to my mind.
You mean to say he was in
cahoots.
conspiracy with
Yes.
his subordinates?
Yes, Your Honor.
I think the command responsibility does not come into play if he is personally involved.
If that would be personally, yes,
so
Your Honor.
only when he is not involved.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. You earlier mentioned that you should be proactive
Yes,
to prevent graft and corruption.
yes, Your
How
Honor.
do you prevent ghost projects?
Well, Your Honor, ghost projects may not come into being or into fruition if we have prevented it after all at its inception. Because if we have prevented it, there would be no ghost project to speak of.
How do you
Ghost,
prevent it?
yeah, as my proposal, Your Honor, I would create an organic committee, whether it's directly under the Ombudsman or a separate committee as recommended by the Ombudsman to the President and to the Congress to enact laws to ensure that all example for the billing process is above board. There's no favor given to those bidders that may have failed the document legal and financial. So in that case, Your Honor, I think the ghost project will be eliminated and eradicated altogether. And even more so, if projects or goods and services, it needs the acceptance of the implementing agency. So if the Ombudsman has a say on it and can monitor that the accomplishment of that projects or the goods or services were well within the plan specifications provided in the bids, then there could be no corruption to speak of, Your Honor. Then ghost projects will be eliminated.
As a judge, have you faced a conflict between the letter of the law and the spirit of justice? How did you resolve it?
In many instances, Your Honor, that's not actually a conflict, but a compassionate justice. Whenever the accused come before the court, and then he would plead guilty to a lesser offense, so much so, then even though the court may or may not accept it, but on compassionate justice, I always accept the plea bargaining that is being exposed by the accused. And of course, when parties, even though as we all know that criminal cases cannot be subject to agreement for that its dismissal, but if the parties come to my court and they have already settled the differences, and in fact, in case of physical injuries, I let them reconcile in court, hug each other, and be as it is as it was before. So much so that they're still friends. So that's a compassionate justice that I am doing in my court. Although the spirit dictates me to do otherwise, but if parties have already settled the differences, then it is legally allowable to have that spirit upheld.
In criminal cases?
Yes, Your Honor, even in criminal cases, if the parties are not anymore willing to proceed with the case, then I will let the private offended party testify why he is not anymore interested in the case, and if it sits well to me that indeed without the testimony of the private offended party, the prosecution would be hard-pressed in prosecuting or proving the guilt of the accused by reasonable doubt, then I do dismiss it provisionally, Your Honor. That's a compassionate justice, Your Honor.
A government official diverts funds to a disaster area without proper bidding, but lives were clearly saved. Would you pursue a criminal case against that official?
Well, Your Honor,
Technical malversation.
as said, Your Honor, the means does not justify the ends. So if ever there would be a reading of the bids process, even though it saved the lives of, let's say, hundreds of people, then still he must be held accountable for the wrongdoings that he had. As we all know, we are a government of laws, not of man. We should not put the hands into our law, rigging the order process for the sake that this would be favorable to the parties. Because if that will be the case, we will have a chaos and anarchy, Your Honor.
Are the key features of the new Government Procurement Act, or NGPA?
I am not well aware, Your Honor, of that new government procurement, but I am aware of the 9184, the old law, where there is a bidding, there's an exemption from bidding, negotiated, shopping, the negotiated if the circumstances arises, Your Honor.
How about the new one?
If I may be given the chance, Your Honor, probably I could very well legally respond to that one, Your Honor.
But at this time, you do not know it, or you do not know them, the features, key features.
I am not well aware, Your Honor.
Okay.
But if given the chance, Your Honor, probably I could legally give my opinion on that one, on that regard.
Okay, this will be the last question. When your term ends, what one achievement will make you feel truly fulfilled in your duty as Ombudsman?
Well, Your Honor, the very crucial point that I must ensure that Ombudsman should have accomplished is the eradication of the corruption at its grassroots level. It will not only help us progressively, it will help also the government, its expenditures. It will also address the social inequalities. It will also address the social services of the government. Because after all, Your Honor, we are not here, it is not how we live, but it is the legacy that we leave behind. So we must fight corruption for our country, for the Filipino people, because after all, Filipino are really worth dying for.
You succeed in eradicating it, there'll be no need for the office of the ombudsman.
There's a because yeah, I think because that is the watchdog, Your Honor. That's the watchdog. We still. Thank you very much, Your Honor. May I just read a parting message, Your Honor? Your Honors, I sincerely hope that Honorable Jervil Reyes Luistro, along with these team members of both Houses and Congress, or whoever among my principal and capable colleagues may be appointed as Ombudsman, will consider my proposals as I have put forth. These measures are not only designed to reduce corruption, but aim to eradicate it as its very roots down to the grassroots levels, ensuring that corruption will have no place in our society. As Filipino citizens, we all have a role to play. Let us rise to the challenge and create a lasting impact. Let us bring about meaningful change even in the face of adversity. In the end, it is not how we live, but the legacy we leave behind that defines us. We must fight corruption. We must fight for our people, for justice, for love of our country. If necessary, we must be willing to give our lives in service of our nation. After all, Filipino are really worth dying for. Thank you, Your Honors.